Welcome everyone to the first edition of what we call the Motoring Conversations, where we're going to have a series of casual conversations with the key players in the automotive industry about the challenges that is facing, especially in the age of COVID. This is the first of a series, and joining us today are Tarun Garg, who's the Director of Sales, Marketing and Service at Hyundai. Tarun, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
We also have
Hi,
Shashank
Pablo.
Srivastava, the Executive Director of Sales and Marketing at Maruti. Shashank, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
We have Naveen Soni, who's the Vice President of Sales and Service at Toyota. Naveen-san, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And we have Parag Satpute, who's the Managing Director of Bridgestone India, and they have very kindly offered to sponsor this series. And they were also the sponsors of the Motoring Awards, which were recently concluded. Thank you very much, Parag, for the sponsorship, of course, and for joining us. And for
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
So I'd like to kick off by saying that the industry finds itself in an extremely unique situation today because never in the automotive industry have all the players been in pretty much the same boat. COVID has sort of put everybody in the same spot in a variety of ways, but also roughly in the same boat. Manufacturers are facing the same problems. Me as a journalist, COVID has affected me because COVID has affected you in individual ways. It has affected my access to vehicles. It has affected the way that I write stories. It has affected, the sort of launches that I used to attend. And it has also come at a time when the automotive industry was already going through a bit of a rough patch. So as a sort of double whammy, I'd like to start off by asking individually, how have you responded to this situation? How, it came out of the blue. So for example, Tarun, how has Hyundai taken this challenge up?
Thank you, Pablo. Yes, you're right. This is like a once in a lifetime, and maybe not in many lifetimes anybody would have seen such kind of an event. I think to start with, the important thing was that we understood that the customer sentiment was low, and he was looking for some reassurance. So I think it all started during that lockdown. We had this Hyundai Cares program where we were just making sure that we were engaged with the customer. We were giving him some tips on how he could really maintain his car. We were engaging him with all our activities which we were doing on the corporate social responsibility front and that bit. Then, of course, the time had come when the unlocking started, how to get our supply chain, how to get the production running. And as you know, Hyundai was one of the first companies when we could start our production. Then the issue came of course, the demand coming back. And of course, everybody had its own guesswork about how the demand will pan out. But I think we have always seen in the past that Indian auto industry has always been very resilient, and we have really recovered very fast. So I think this is what we have been witnessing. And of course, as we go along today, we'll talk about so many other opportunities which we were able to really see even in these Corona times, and connect much better with the customers and leverage any opportunity which came up.
Naveen sir, would you agree broadly with what Tarun is saying?
I think broadly, yes. But each company has its own, pluses and minuses, and depending on where you're coming from in terms of product lineups and the offerings for the customer, I think the response would be unique by each manufacturer. Obviously, yes. In a way, what I would like to agree to what Mr. Garg was saying is that that it's been a very unique opportunity that has been given to us as marketeers. How to kind of respond to this. No 2 days have been different, the same in the last 4 months. I can tell you that much. Sure. Every day we kind of discover a new challenge. There is a new thing that is thrown at us because of the current situation. And I think that the need of the hour is to kind of respond to it with speed, agility, and responsiveness that is required in this situation. So that has been the key learning for us. That how do you kind of become more agile, more alert to the situation, keep responding as the situation unfolds. Some days the things look to be trending to a particular direction, then suddenly big stone wall that you hit. But then obviously that is the fun and frolic part of this entire situation. That every day is
Right.
a unique day. Yeah. So that's a good lot of good learnings also, which we can store for a lifetime.
Shashank, as the market's largest player, this concept of agility that Tarun and Naveen were both talking about, how has Maruti incorporated that into its own into the way that it's handled things?
Yeah, I think very rightly said by Naveen. Completely agree that you have to be in such situations, these unprecedented times. Agility, flexibility, these things matter a lot for the health of the organization. And when we saw this COVID thing, Tarun was mentioning it's like a once in many lifetimes. And I am sure it's, in some ways as marketers, we are lucky, but as a people, we probably are not so lucky in terms of this pandemic. Because this is a special situation which has come, I am told, once in 100 years. Probably our parents or our grandparents also never experienced such a thing. So first of all, when it happened, which was, I think we got the effect in March end, we obviously had to rally behind our employees, behind our channel partners, because there
Right.
was absolutely no retail and there was a cash flow problem. There was also psychological issues in terms of resilience, building resilience,
That's
or
right.
being resolute. As we keep saying, ready, resolute, resilient was our slogan during that period. So we have to engage with also the consumers who were also equally confused because the situation was absolutely new. And as leaders, probably we need to be mindful of those aspects of employees and our channel partners as well. And then once we start again, obviously things are different. And Tarun was mentioning how marketers can take many actions to overcome the situation. And what we find post pandemic, you have to really recalibrate, rethink, reimagine the business. So some people are saying it's not a restart, it's a reboot. And there are so many other, sort of thing. And we have to, of course, relearn, rethink of what the consumers really want, and then accordingly calibrate ourselves. So I think it has been pretty challenging, but from Maruti Suzuki's perspective, we have learned a lot and we have corrected many things, and it has many processes have caught our attention because of this, and that's been an opportunity to learn. And going forward, we think we'll be more resilient and stronger because of this experience.
Parag, you've been listening to the conversation, and words such as resilience, agility have come up. So how is Bridgestone as a marketer? And Shashank-san was saying that possibly as a marketing person, this situation it makes you happy because it gives you so many challenges. So how have you taken that into your sort of personal experience?
Yeah, so some of the experiences, of course, are common with the auto companies. I think our first priority was to protect the safety of our people and make sure that the operations are secure. Secondly, we very quickly shifted our attention to our business partners, be it the OEMs, the auto companies, or the dealer network. And then the auto companies are large companies, much larger than us even. And in a way, we were all at a standstill during April and early part of May. But we have a sizable part of our business which comes from the aftermarket or the replacement business, where we are dependent on all the dealers. And for a few weeks, they were, of course, locked down like us. But to some extent, tires is an essential commodity. Even through the lockdown, essential commodities were being transported all around the country. Ambulances were running, doctors were running. So tires were needed. So it was very important for us to be able to meet this demand. And we could only do that by working very closely with our dealer partners. Being small companies, being small businesses, they faced huge challenges in terms of safety, in terms of liquidity. So we were very quick to move ahead and support them so as to, of course, make sure that our business remains sustainable, but so that we can get our products to the community which needs it. And this is very important for us because in the core business philosophy of Bridgestone, we have serving society as a very, very important tenet. And if there was ever a need to serve society, it was during these COVID times.
Yeah,
and the first few weeks, I can tell you, myself and the whole management, including all the salespeople, all our attention and energy was focused on how we can help the society around us and beyond the CSR activities that we do. So providing tires to the fleets which were transporting food and medicine and everything became a very, very important priority. So
right.
it has been an evolving pandemic situation for us. I mean, those were the first phases. And now, in the recent weeks, we have got all the auto companies revving up their production. So suddenly there's a huge ramp up in production and a huge demand being placed on us. And our plants are also very large, and it takes time to ramp this up. To do it at the right quality with the safety of the people in mind is a challenge in itself. So the focus right now is meeting the customer demands of the people who are here selling their products.
Well, I think we can all agree that certainly in July there were some pleasing numbers all around. There's silver linings appear to be coming up. Speaking of silver linings, what would you say are the opportunities that have presented themselves because of COVID? Now, of course, it has come as a blow. We all wish it hadn't happened, but the fact is that it has. And any change, any big change brings with it opportunities which are both very evident and also opportunities that are there that you go looking for. So what do you think are the opportunities that have presented themselves in a good way, shall we say, because of COVID? Shashank-san, perhaps you would like to start with that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of opportunities, in fact. First of all, as I mentioned, we had to relook at the processes, all our systems, to see where we can remove what the Japanese call muda, which is inefficiencies and wastages, etc. Because that was the order of the day. Second, we relook at our entire business model for our channel partners. Third, I think there are some other consumer behaviors which helped us develop new ways of interacting with consumers. For example, digital platform is one of them.
Yes.
The digital platform was always a trend even before the lockdown and before this pandemic came. However, going forward, we realized that is actually accelerated. And this movement towards it can actually offer you a much higher consumer satisfaction if we do well. It can our conversion times can actually reduce. Our ROIs on marketing spends can be better. But the thing is that we have to understand it well and execute the whole thing well. So that digital platform development and acceleration is also a very positive development, I believe.
Right.
And of course, it has given us an opportunity to interact closely with consumers, because now we are trying to understand, if I can say, we try to see how the consumer trends would be. There are, of course, many opportunities specifically for companies like Maruti Suzuki, because in stress times like the ones we are seeing now, it has been shown that consumers tend to gravitate towards the more established brands, the more reliable brands, the more well-known brands. That in sense is an opportunity for Maruti Suzuki. This is also an opportunity where people are saying that they would be actually going away from public transport and will shift towards usage of personal transport. That's a big opportunity for mobility. I mean, people who are in this business of mobility, like Maruti Suzuki. Third thing, for example, people are saying buying for functionality will increase, which means the first-time buyers are probably going to, or even additional car buying, and we are finding that data in the last 3-4 months will increase. That's another opportunity for Maruti Suzuki specifically, and for, of course, all manufacturers, but specifically also for us, we are taking it as a big opportunity. We are pretty strong in that sense, in that field. And on all factors, whether it is processes for profit, to look at avenues for making our systems more efficient and more profitable, or even in terms of the old business itself, a lot of opportunities which I have just listed.
Arun, let me ask you a question about this digital aspect specifically, because you were quite proactive in bringing such a platform on. How has it done, and do you see digital car buying becoming the new norm? Are people going to take to this in a big way, or do you think that there will be a situation where they will want to go back to showrooms and have the actual touch and feel experience as they used to? Because that was almost like an outing in many ways. The whole family would go along and touch and feel the car that they might want to buy. Whereas the thing with digital is that, of course, it's all high tech and all that, but there's a certain sort of separation, shall we say, that comes into the process. So, what are your views on that?
Yes, Pablo. So basically, I see it from two viewpoints. So one is, of course, the digital buying, and as you would know that even before this pandemic had come in, when they had launched this click to buy portal, which was first of its kind, where end-to-end buying could happen online. And I think we have seen a very, very good traction, and more than around 3.5 million people have visited the website. Customers can go, they can choose the car, they can take the help online of a sales consultant of the dealership, they can do the financing online, all documentation, and in fact, they can get a delivery of the car also at their home or at their office. But the interesting aspect is when we actually, the customer had did all the process, and when we said, sir, okay, would you want the delivery at your home or office? The customer said no. Like you said, Pablo, he said, car buying is a very emotional thing for me, and I would want to come to the showroom with my family to take the delivery. So that delivery aspect is still showroom, and which means the dealers continue to stay relevant. The second opportunity here is like we launched the Hyundai Mobility Membership yesterday. I think again one of its kind. I think we can clearly see that what kind of an ecosystem we can build for the customers to really provide them a lifetime value of benefits. I think again an industry first initiative, and I think definitely with so many customers going for digital, I think this would really help us. The third aspect is in the communication bit. As you would have known that we had launched the Creta just before the lockdown happened, and then during the lockdown the Verna, and then the Tucson. So we had three models. A proper launch could not happen, and then we had this event called the Next Dimension, where we were able to really showcase all these three models, and we were able to reach hundreds of millions of customers. And I'm talking in terms of actual views of the event. And I think this was a great opportunity. Very cost effective. It gave us a larger than life image. And of course, most simply, at one go, we could reach out to customers. What Naveen ji mentioned and Shashank ji mentioned, I think this pandemic has thrown up some really good opportunities. Now it is up to us marketers to see how we can leverage them and establish a better connect with the customer. So this is which is a very, very important aspect to look at.
Naveen-san, as far as Toyota is concerned, what would you say the new opportunities that have come up are? You yourselves are gearing up for a fairly big launch, for example. But what are the other aspects that Toyota has taken sort of into itself seriously?
Sure. What came as an advice from our headquarters and which we diligently followed is to revalidate every business process, not just one way or the other. We were asked to revalidate everything that we do and put it into three buckets. Do we have to stop doing that activity, what we are doing? Do we have to change that activity? And do we have to continue doing that activity? So the stop, change, continue mantra that came from Japan, which we diligently followed, was basically to check what are the things that the customer wants in such an environment. We are all talking about once in a lifetime, once in a century kind of an opportunity. So if that is the case, then something could be different. We can't assume that the customer end will be the same. It is only impacting us. So if it is impacting the customer, then do we continue to do things that we were doing just because there's inertia in the moment? So that is what we had to do. And just to give you an example, there were like 30 to 40% of the things that we had to put a hard stop to. Now, process owners were reluctant to give up those processes, but it was a tough time convincing them that there are new ways to address the current market conditions. And how do we kind of improve those things? So a very minuscule 20% was remaining in the continue section. Most of it was either stop or change. That was the big learning for us. And in the change category, basically we have to again think from the consumer's point of view. Like digital is one aspect. I would like to table another aspect, which has been a laggard in our country for a very long time, and I think the collateral benefit that that segment of customers get today is very very big. I'm talking about subscription as a means to own a vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, in countries like when you travel or whether you stay in those developed markets, it's their way to buy and sell or own a vehicle, whether it is leasing or subscription. In our country, still it's very emotive, to buy a car, to own a car. How can I
Right.
just keep a yellow board inside my garage? People, what will people say? These are things that
Mm.
people have to overcome. But this pandemic has actually given us an opportunity. So as I said, there are some ways and means that you can approach this, and what it has given us an opportunity is that the consumer is willing, because his economic needs have not grown,
Right.
his mobility needs have grown.
Mm.
So obviously he's willing to look at this way to buy or own a vehicle. So that is what I would like to give a concrete example of change. So if I were to stick to say no, I have to sell cars only. I cannot just get into any other means of reaching my customer. Now in that also,
Right.
whether it is B2B, whether it is B2C, those were questions that were faced with us, and we have taken some very very hard decisions during this time, because at the end of the day we are all here to serve the need of the customer. If the customer wants a
Right.
particular way of style of mobility, then we have to adopt. There's no choice given to us.
Mm.
So that's how we have kind of flexed ourselves in this difficult times. But as I said, these are things that I or we as a company would cherish, because this has given us an opportunity to reboot. Otherwise, things would have gone
Yes.
as per usual business sentiment, and
Mm.
we probably would have reached some, like we say, kaizen. But this is like, control or delete, change the paradigm.
Correct.
Can you just look at any other way of doing the same business? Is the remarkable thing that has happened for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the same applies for pretty much all industries. In fact, even as a journalist, I've had to completely change the way that I think and the way that I operate. I think that was an excellent point. Which brings me on to my next question, which is, now we talk about the new normal. We are now living the new normal. We're experiencing it every day. But what has also happened is, because a lot of industries have come to a grinding halt, people have begun to see the environmental impact of that. As in, if you're on social media, you see people, singing praises to the better air quality. Skies are clearer. So they're seeing that a certain slowing down, as it were, has had a positive impact on the environment. Now, going forward, as manufacturers, how do you balance that? Because sustainability is so important these days. In fact, even more important given the environmental factors that are coming into play. How do you balance sustainability, being environmentally conscious, and at the same time looking, quite frankly, at your bottom line? I mean, at the end of the day, you're all companies, you need to make money. So how do you do that? Say, Parag, do you have an opinion on that?
Sure. It's an interesting topic that you have raised. So sustainability was always important for all of our companies. I think it's not a new word. But like you rightly said, that consumers have probably become much more aware of it, and especially consumers in countries like ours have become much more aware of it. I don't see it as a challenge. Good sustainability policies eventually should make good business sense as well. And let me give you a couple of examples of that. Let me take tires as a industry. So we have a lot of pressure from our customers to develop tires which will help to reduce fuel consumption. Right. So over the last few years, we have been working very diligently with all the people on this panel, all the companies on this panel, to come up with low RRC tires to save fuel consumption. And that impacts fuel consumption by as much as 7 to 10%. And it's good business sense for us, because we are able to sell a product which is more premium. It's good business sense for the auto companies, because they are able to sell cars which are environmentally friendly, and environmentally conscious consumers not only support the environment, but also are able to save on their fuel costs. So this is one example where it's very clear that being sustainable or environmentally friendly is not going to affect your bottom line negatively. Similarly,
Right.
in our operations, we have other examples. I mean, we use a lot of energy as a tire industry. And recently, we have made a significant shift towards renewable energy, such as solar, such as biomass for generating steam. And not only is this much, much better for the environment, but it is almost half the price that traditional energy would have costed.
Right.
So once again, by focusing very, very clearly on the bottom line as well as sustainability, we can continue to thrive our business and support the environment. So this is how successful companies, successful industries are looking at the sustainability question. So it's no longer a trade-off between profitability and being environmentally friendly. And I'm sure my colleagues in the panel will add on to that with their own examples.
Sure.
Shashank-san, if I can bring up the topic of electric vehicles now.
Yeah.
Both Hyundai and Toyota are both in the market already with hybrids, with all electric vehicles. Maruti has not yet jumped into it in the way that they have. What are your plans in this sector? Because it's clearly now a hot topic, and it's going to be even more significant in the days to come.
Yeah, so I think partly, if I can continue from that sustainability question which Parag was mentioning about, I also agree with him completely. Sustainability, profitability, they are not necessarily opposite to each other. In fact, they go together. And I can cite examples like even water conservation, for example, reducing or recycling water usage for production. There's a lot of water being used for production, for example, or solar electricity being used, and things like that. There are innumerable ways where we can add to the sustainability, including conservation of energy, usage of less energy, usage of lesser material, recycling, for example. Recycling is also another great example. We are now almost 80%. Sometimes there are companies reaching 83, 84% of recycling of material for making of the cars. So those are examples. And yes, related with this is the need for more fuel efficient vehicles, because as you said, consumers are much more conscious of environmental conditions, about environment itself. And surely automobile companies have to contribute to a better environment. And one of the best ways they can contribute is by getting more fuel efficient cars on the ground with lesser emissions. Now, talking of the electric vehicles, which you began this question with. So yes, electric vehicles, I think going forward is finally we will come to that stage when we have electric vehicles, when the power trains and the battery costs are sufficiently low for people to start converting big time. So when the ICE engine powertrain cost, the two graphs cross, because as the emission standards become more stronger, the ICE engine powertrains are going to cost more. Whereas as the volumes increase and the battery technologies become better, the powertrain cost for electric vehicles will come down. So somewhere these two graphs will cross. And that is the time when there will be a large scale shift towards the electric vehicles. And there are, of course, research which have suggested that by 2030 or so, you may have about 7 to 10% of the vehicles, the electric vehicles. The question is, what is it that is preventing the growth of electric vehicles in the entire world? In fact, not just in India. So even if you look at the world, last year of the 92 million vehicles which were sold in the world, about 1.5% were electric vehicles. And the impediments to the growth of electric vehicles is that the battery technology is not really cost effective at this moment. There is range anxiety also, because if you use bigger batteries, they are going to be more expensive. And if you use a smaller battery, you have range anxiety in consumers. And on top of it, India has a charging infrastructure issue. So while the shift will happen between today, 2020 to 2030, assuming some CAGR of 6 to 7%, 70 million cars will be made and sold in India, out of which maybe 65 million will be ICE vehicles still. So we need to do something about these ICE vehicles also, not just wait for that entire conversion to electric vehicles. And we
paradigm
believe
to shift.
For the parent. So we believe that there are you need to have a mix of technologies. So we have, for example, a fuel type itself. CNG, for example, is extremely good. Is very good for both in terms of fuel efficiency being very good, being very good on the environment front, and also cheap enough because it's been encouraged by the government. It's one very good option. Maruti Suzuki good. Second is the hybrids, which we spoke of. By the way, Maruti Suzuki actually got the hybrids in the country first, I would say, with our earlier thing. We still have hybrid in our thing. Now, the whether you have a strong hybrid or a mild hybrid or a weaker hybrid is something which is a different discussion. However, hybrids will also become very important. And before Naveen can say, I can put that it's electric. We talk of electrified vehicles rather than electric vehicles. And this is something which I borrow from Naveen in every discussion which we have on our different panels and also include. So he has the copyright to this electrified thing, but I am going to use it, Naveen. So that is also another way by which. So while we transit from this ICE thing to finally to the electric thing, yes, we would definitely have a mix of technology. And going forward, we need to be fuel efficient, extremely fuel efficient, to be able to curb those emissions, which the world is so bothered about because of the environmental concerns.
Tarun, I know that you're... Sorry. I know that Tarun is...
To be sure, we would have, obviously, I'm talking Maruti Suzuki electric vehicle at some point of time. And obviously, it is not going to be niche. So one thing which happens is that sometimes, it's not that technology is not available. So many OEMs will just put the vehicle because one way to think about it is somebody has to start it. So even if there is a infrastructure which is not there, somebody has to start it. That's one way of thinking. The other is if you really want to make a difference, not just in terms of whether you are the first to bring or whether you want to showcase the technology, which in any case every manufacturer has, but whether you want to really make a difference in terms of impacting on the volumes, we have to take care of many of those other things so that it makes a business sense as well. And we can really sell large numbers and make an impact on the environment.
Tarun, I know you have a hard stop coming up, so I'll have a quick question for you before you have to run off. What do you think the response, or what do you think rather of the response that the government has had toward the automotive industry during this time in general? When the lockdown began, if you were to look at the news, if you're looking at social media, there were a lot of colleagues, in the automotive industry. In fact, all of us journalists were saying that, quite frankly, it doesn't look like the government is doing as much as it could be doing to support the industry. In fact, there was an interview recently. One of your colleagues from one of the German brands, in fact, gave a fairly blunt interview to Times of India where he said that there appears to be no clear framework. There appears to be no clear roadmap. Things keep sort of changing overnight, and it's difficult to function in that manner. So, do you think that the government should be doing more, quite frankly, to put it bluntly?
Look, I believe in one thing, and we as a company believe that everybody has their role to play. So government has its priorities. I'm sure they have to look at the larger section of the Indian population. When such a pandemic had happened, with so many poor people, facing hunger and maybe death. So I think so government has its priorities right. That is the first part. The second part is, as long as any steps that the government is taking, which is basically good for the economy, I think more or less the car industry will definitely benefit, because ours is a discretionary purchase and it matters a lot how the country's economy is progressing. So, like I said, so that is the second. The third is, I think the way industry OEMs have really kind of fought in this pandemic clearly shows that we as we are very strong. This auto industry is very strong. I mean, if you see, even in July, the industry was 80% of the last year's average volume.
Last year.
And probably in August, we should be more than 90% of last year's, and I'm talking about auto industry at large, passenger cars. So, so frankly speaking, we have shown a lot of resilience as a group of OEMs. And very clearly also the customers have shown that they are willing to spend money. In fact, on the contrary, now that they don't have any avenues to spend money on travel, international travel, holidays, hotels, dresses, maybe all that money is coming into cars. And because I was seeing a very interesting trend, because all these discussions, everybody was talking about entry-level cars, and here we have the average share in the total industry has gone up substantially. In fact, it is touching now close to 40%. So, and Hyundai is definitely a gainer because we have some very strong SUVs. So I think I am very happy with the way we have all responded. And of course, we look forward to the government. We hope that this scrappage policy, which has been talked about, comes up soon. And of course, they do things which puts more money in the hand of the consumer. But we have always believed that government knows their job the best, and we should do what we can do. And and I'm sure results will come.
That was very diplomatically put. Thank you, Tarun. Naveen, if I can just divert part of that question to you. Do you share Tarun's enthusiasm and his optimism about numbers? For example, he's saying that next month we're likely to see even greater numbers. So essentially, do you see better days ahead, regardless of what's going on right now?
See, the way I'd like to put it is, May was better than April, June was better than May, July was better than June, and definitely I also echo the sentiment that August will be better than July. So definitely that there is no disconnect on that issue. It's about, as I said earlier, it's about, what kind of products that you offer, what kind of mobility needs that are emerging, how can you service those mobility needs from your product lineup. Each consumer, India is not one country. India, I tell my colleagues from Japan,
yes,
I said, you are not talking to one country, you're talking to multi-layered, stratified, homogeneous product segments, and each one of them commands enough attention for you to create a different product for them. So that's how the country has been, and I think that's how it will be. So to each one, it will be a different impact. The government, I think, has been doing fair bit. As an industry, we can sing that song "Dil Mange More," but that is not going to take us anywhere because they are also under pressure. If I were to run the government, then I would do this. It's very easy for me to say. But those who are running it, it's the most difficult time for them to be managing this situation. There's a large size of population which lives under the poverty line. How does the government take care of them? How does the government take care of the industry? How does the government take care of the common man? There are so many priorities, and sometimes these priorities are conflicting with each other. So they do their best, I think, from given whatever they can. So I'm not trying to contradict anybody's opinion. Each one has a right to hold his or her opinion. So that's how it is. And I think the industry will see better days is the only thing that I would like to say. Yeah.
And in that respect, do you think that we will ever go back to quote unquote the good old days, which was pre-lockdown, where things were being done in a certain way? Or do you think that things have changed completely and irrevocably, and that we will see a completely new way of functioning in the automotive industry?
I wish I had that magic wand to tell you what it will be once the real effect of the say the vaccine appears, or something that we can safely go back to the old normal, if not the new normal. I think if you look at the industry size, there were comparisons made. We've gone back 10 years. We got back to 2010 levels, in terms of, what are the industry size compositions for this year and projections that are going to be. So, but one way is to, just sit and brood saying that, okay, now 10 years, I've taken a root shock and now this has to, recover, and how will it recover? Where will it recover? But that's a given. Now, if that's a given, then how do we move on from where we are? And how does each company align its strategies to, meet the customer needs? Will be the most important thing in the coming days to come. And if we can kind of adopt to whatever the consumer needs are there, and if we can read them, each one will have their own space. There's no need for anybody to nudge anybody. Each one of us can have their own space in this market and then coexist and survive. And hopefully, the real test, if you ask me, the real test, you're linking it to your sustainability question. The real test of sustainability is when we all start making money profitably. Profitability is the foundation for sustainability. If you don't have profits, then there is no reason for you and I to talk about sustainability. Okay, so it is not saying that from a capitalist mindset that I make this statement. I think it is very important for companies to, whatever we have to do from CSR point of view, from giving it back to community, for serving the consumer, all that requires some basic fuel which is coming from the profits of the company. If that is disappearing, then there is no fun in doing business. Then you might as well close shop, So therefore, most important thing is, these frustrations that you see in public domain emanate from these facts, that if somebody is, struggling, then obviously he'll have such opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Another question that I have, which I think ties in with the situation in India as well, is that if you look at global trends, especially in Western countries and in Europe and things like that, millennials are no longer as interested in buying cars, private transportation as they used to be. In fact, they're shifting to public transport. They're shifting to using the bicycling, or they're using ride shares. So how does that tie in with, for example, that affects demand, and that also has an effect here because a lot of you have exports going to these countries. Do you think you ever foresee a situation where that will happen in India, where more and more people just decide that, no, I'm going to use, I'm just going to use public transport, or I will switch to ride sharing, or I will just use taxis or something? Is that something that you ever foresee? Shashank-san, for example.
Yes, very interesting question. And I think we have to look at the demographic profiles when we compare countries, and also the stage of economic development those countries are in as compared with India. That's very essential, because otherwise you can't make that comparison. For example, in India, the first-time buyers close to 50%, and they have been remarkably consistently 50% for the last 20 years, for which the data is available. Compare that with Japan or US, where less than 5% are first-time buyers. So obviously that is because of their demographics, also because of the stage of and the penetration of cars in the population, which is remarkably low for India. So I think it's in India, I believe car buying is still a very, very aspirational, and as long as that lasts, it will continue for a very long time to be like that. Our future projections of demography also indicate so. So I think it's a long way off, but yes, at some stage later on, yes. Secondly, you talked about public transport. In India, again, public transport, if you compare with transport in places like, for example, in Tokyo, you have to walk less than 100 meters to get to a station, which is not the case for India. So the level of development of public transport, in fact, the level of even road development in areas which are like this thing is quite a way off, I would say, for India. So we need to be mindful of that as well. And for consumer behavior itself, I think I'm just wanting to relate it with the previous question I think you had something just before this, that the change in behavior because of some such events like the pandemic, for example, we are not sure which one will be irretrievably changed, what behaviors are, and which will revert back. So there's definitely would be some behavior which will be reverted. Humans have the resilience and also the ability to forget very quickly. So, and there would also be something which is already existing, which will be accelerated. So in a balance, I think for some time, I believe this will. And for shared mobility, yes, last year when there was a drop in volumes in the industry, one of the big things apart from cost of acquisition and this BS4, BS6 transition where people kept saying that it was also because of this OLX or this shared mobility, Ola, Uber sort of this thing. But it's really not been proved, because in markets like US or UK, Europe, or even in China, markets have actually grown after the introduction of these shared mobility companies. It's not really come down. So it's relating the two might be also, again, the data available doesn't justify saying that there will be a reduction. So purely by looking at the statistics. So I think we are a fair way off from that. And right now we are looking at motorization. People are looking at with aspiration towards owning a car. And I think that for some time, I'm sure will continue. And of course, societies change, economies change, consumers change, demographics change. And going forward, that would change for India as well. But immediate future, I don't see that change.
Arun, do you agree? Do you think that this will continue to be the case?
I look at it from this perspective that I think some new opportunities are also emerging with millennials. Even if suppose millennials are deciding not to buy, and Mr. Sony also talked about it, I think subscription, Hyundai launched the subscription about a year back, and we are seeing so many millennials opting for this subscription model, because frankly, they want to really change the car maybe after every 6 months.
Every 2 or 3 years.
It's a very economical way of doing it. Then we launched this mobility membership program yesterday, Hyundai Mobility Membership. I think keeping in mind the millennials in mind. So my point is that yes, while we may have a different opinion about how does the behavior of a millennial change in terms of buying a car, one thing which is very clear is that it is throwing in a whole lot of new opportunities which are coming in terms of the features they are wanting in their cars, in terms of turbo engines, like they are looking for really that kind of adrenaline while driving. So I think as marketers, we should always be very happy when we see different segments coming up with different needs, and it gives us a great opportunity to do a lot. And we are talking about profitability and sustainability. Find it, millennials are also people who are really wanting to, maybe not look only at the functional aspects, like which Shashank mentioned, or say only at a value for money. They are much more aspirational, so they are willing to pay if you are really able to meet their aspirations. I see it as an opportunity.
Parag, I know that this question doesn't strictly apply entirely to you, but just in terms of the way that you see the industry going, with the things we were talking about earlier, all of these things, the sustainability, millennials having different wants, needs, where do you see the industry going? Because obviously the health of the industry is directly tied in with the health of yours.
Yeah. So we are part of the industry for sure. And some of the trends which my colleagues have talked about are very, very relevant for us. I'll just talk about two of them. One is the digital technology and how it is affecting business, especially post-COVID. And the second one is the subscription-based business models. I think both of these are very relevant and have the potential to change the tire industry as well. On the digital side, we see that consumers are now researching tires much more online. Fortunately or unfortunately, tires is not such a product which you can order to your home and fit it yourself. It needs professional service. But there is definitely a want from the consumers to minimize the physical time they spend in a tire shop, or the physical time they spend going from one shop to the other to find the right product. So that opens up a big opportunity for us to engage with consumers online, and then to direct them to the right outlet and make sure that the right products are fitted. And in response to this, we have launched an online service called bookmyservice.com, where consumers can research their products online, find the closest dealer, book a specific appointment, and go there and get their tire fitted in a matter of minutes. We are also developing it further to take it so that eventually we'll be able to provide this service at the doorstep of the consumers. So that is the direction in which the industry will go, and digital will open up these opportunities for us. So that was one. The other one is the subscription-based model. I heard my colleagues talk about how cars can be given on subscription. So for sure, tires is a product which lends itself very well to that. And in advanced countries, in fact, Bridgestone itself in Europe has a product where for a fixed monthly fee, consumers can forget about all the worries about their tires. Not just the cost of the product, but servicing of the product is also taken care of by us. And I see that COVID will accelerate such trends even in India. So these are areas which will definitely change the face of the industry and create new opportunities for the quick movers. So that's where we are looking in.
Right. Well, gentlemen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know that I promised I would let you go in an hour, so I will begin the process of doing that. But before that, I'd like to thank all of you very much. I know all of you are very busy, whether you're working from home or not. It's work is work. Thank you for taking some time out and for, in fact, kickstarting this series of motoring conversations that we have planned. We hope to see you all again in a series of further conversations later. I think we can all agree that despite everything that has gone on, I think there are several silver linings that have appeared, and that the health of the industry looks to be fairly robust, and that the days ahead are to be looked forward to in very many ways. And all of that, of course, ties in with what I do, because at the end of the day, I get to drive all these fantastic products that you come up with and have some fun with it. I hope, speaking of fun, that that this has been interesting and informational and fun, in fact, for you. Even though, as you said earlier, you've seen each other's faces, I think, possibly too many times in the last while for your own comfort. But again, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to all of you, and we hope to see you again.